Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People Story. Once upon a time, in a bustling city filled with limited parking spaces, I found myself residing in an apartment complex with just a handful of parking spots. The struggle to secure a spot was a daily ordeal, as our small complex housed 8 units, each with the potential for 2 cars. You can imagine the chaos that ensued. To compound the problem, the assigned parking spaces were free, while the alternative across the street required constant payment. It was a situation ripe for exploitation, and exploit it my neighbor did, after she had already moved out. Allow me to explain. The girl next door had recently landed a new job within a 10-minute walk from our complex. It seemed like the perfect arrangement for her, as driving to work would incur additional parking expenses. So she cleverly opted to leave her car parked in our limited lot, saving herself a tidy sum. I couldn't help but think she was making a hasty decision by moving to a more expensive part of town, when a year of saving would have yielded greater benefits. Alas, my concerns were swept aside. Months passed, and a couple finally moved into the vacant unit next door. I naively assumed that the parking predicament would resolve itself, as our ex-neighbor no longer resided there. But alas, I was only half right. Her car was no longer occupying her old spot, it had claimed mine. Night after night, I returned home from my tiresome commute to find her car mocking me from my designated space. With her being at work during those hours, direct confrontation seemed impossible. Frustration built steadily within me as I was forced to resort to parking across the street and paying for overnight stays. The situation continued, each occurrence further fueling my irritation. The neighbor's constant disregard for my space weighed heavily on me, especially as I entered the tired and swollen state of pregnancy. Leaving a note felt petty and insignificant. I desired a face-to-face conversation to resolve the matter. Then came that fateful night when exhaustion consumed me. My fiancée had yet to return home, and there it was again, her car occupying my spot. The frustration reached its boiling point, and in a moment of defiance I called an emergency towing service. Guilt briefly flickered within me, but logic swiftly smothered it. I was tired of shouldering the expense of parking at my own home. While she reveled in her sense of entitlement, my pregnancy only magnified my distress. At the crack of dawn the following morning, our tranquil home was shattered by furious pounding on our door. My fiancée opened it, and there she stood, our ex-neighbor, screaming and sobbing uncontrollably. Curiosity led me to the doorway, and I was greeted by a barrage of accusations and tears. Unflinchingly, I explained that her car had been towed as a result of her unauthorized parking in my spot. We were weary from our long hours and had grown tired of this injustice. It was not a crime to seek comfort during pregnancy and avoid the hassle of distant parking. Her anger escalated, and she threatened to sue us for the towing expenses, as she couldn't retrieve her car from the impound lot. Angrily, I advised her to order an Uber and dismissed her by slamming the door shut. Little did I know this would only be the beginning of our battle. The next day, my fiancée informed me that one of her friends had taken to social media to vilify us. According to her friend, our ex-neighbor was struggling to pay rent, and we had heartlessly abandoned her. While empathy coursed through my veins, I couldn't help but feel she had brought this situation upon herself. She had chosen to move to a more affluent part of town without considering the financial consequences. Instead of engaging in a mature conversation with us, she had resorted to entitlement and manipulation. Fueled by a sense of injustice, my fiancé blocked her friend's messages, effectively cutting off any further attempts to tarnish our reputation. Days turned into weeks, and we heard nothing from our ex-neighbor. Our parking spot remained unoccupied, a small victory in the ongoing battle. In the meantime, my pregnancy progressed, and the anticipation of becoming a parent brought both joy and anxiety. I had resolved to put the parking ordeal behind me, focusing on the well-being of our growing family. However, fate had other plans in store. One evening, as the sun cast its golden glow over the city, we received a certified letter in the mail. Opening it with a mix of curiosity and trepidation, we discovered that our ex-neighbor had indeed followed through on her threat. She had filed a lawsuit against us for the towing expenses and emotional distress caused by the incident. The world seemed to shrink around me as panic set in. How could I handle the stress of a legal battle while nurturing new life within me? Doubts gnawed at my resolve, but deep down I knew I had to fight. I had to protect the well-being of my unborn child and the sanctity of our home. Summoning every ounce of courage, we engaged the services of a competent attorney. Days turned into weeks as legal proceedings unfolded. The courtroom became a battleground where truths and falsehoods clashed, each side fighting tooth and nail for victory. The tension was palpable and the fate of our family hung in the balance. Witnessing the strength and resilience of a pregnant woman fighting for justice, the court was captivated. The jury, swayed by the sheer absurdity of our ex-neighbor's claims, delivered a resounding verdict in our favor. We were exonerated from all charges, and our ex-neighbor's attempt to exploit the legal system had crumbled before our eyes. The next one is a pro-revenge story. This story primarily takes place between me and Crappy Neighbor, who is a member of my community's HOA. Sorry if it's a bit long. As a bit of background, my 3 roommates and I moved into a housing community consisting of cookie-cutter townhomes. All of these homes have garages that open onto streets winding through the community. This is important later, with the front doors opening to a path on the other side of the house. Additionally, there are free parking spots on the edge of the community where there are no houses. When we first moved in, we quickly found out that parking could be a bit of a pain during the day, especially when people had guests on weekends. Admittedly, my roommates and I have more cars than the average family. Since we usually have to commute for work, each of us has 1 car. We try to make parking easier by using the garage, but due to our sporting equipment, we can usually only fit 1 car in there. When all the parking in the free spots is full, we park our cars right up against the garage and leave them there during the day or overnight. We've seen other neighbors do it, and it still leaves ample room for people driving on the street to pass by. One day, Crappy Neighbor approached us while my roommates and I were in the garage organizing some stuff. He told us that we couldn't park there overnight as it's against community rules. Before we had a chance to respond, he added, "And if you do it again, I will personally make sure you're towed." His first comment was reasonable since we had just moved in and didn't know the rule. However, his second comment made him sound like an ass and was unnecessary. One of my roommates simply responded that we didn't know about the rule as we had just moved in, and we wouldn't park there overnight anymore. Crappy Neighbor, clearly trying to assert his dominance, responded with, "Good, you better not because I'll be watching." From then on, we followed the rules. If we parked in front of our garage during the day, we made sure to move before going to sleep. This worked out for a while until one fateful day. One of my roommates stopped by quickly after work to grab some dinner and clothes before heading to his girlfriend's. It was around 7 p.m., so he parked up against the garage as it would be quicker than the parking spaces. Plus, it was early enough that he didn't think he'd get towed. Around 8 p.m., he went to head out, but his car was gone. Guess who was there, though? Crappy Neighbor standing right outside. Immediately, he said to my roommate, "I told you you were going to get towed if you parked here again." Crappy Neighbor and my roommate argued for a bit before my roommate came back inside and called the car lot. Turns out they were closed, so he would have to get his car in the morning. The kicker? They were going to charge him an overnight fee. All in all, it came out to $500, which isn't a small amount of money for us. This neighbor has been an ass to us since we moved in, and even though it wasn't my car that was towed, I took this personally. To make sure we didn't get towed again, we decided to read the community rules. Lo and behold, we found out that the street in front of the garage is actually considered a fire lane, and no one is supposed to park there at any point during the day. Between Crappy Neighbor treating us like crap, and the fact that we could hear him yelling at his wife every night, not a big detail to the story, but just wanted to add to my point that this guy just sucked, I started to plan my revenge. Since quarantine started, I've been able to work from home, and my desk conveniently overlooks the street between the houses. This means I can clearly see Crappy Neighbor's garage. I started to take notice of when he parked his car out in front of his garage. For about 2 weeks, I noticed that he would come home around 1 p.m. and leave again at 2 p.m. On the 3rd week, I decided to initiate my revenge. On Monday, true to his schedule, he stopped by around 1 p.m. After about 10 minutes, I called the tow company and informed them that he was parked in the fire lane and requested them to come and remove his car. 20 minutes later, a tow truck rolled up, hooked his car, and towed it away. About 15 minutes later, Crappy Neighbor came out, and I could hear him start to yell back into his house, presumably at his wife. He then left and didn't return until later that evening after retrieving his car. It was funny to do this, and I made sure to send snaps to my roommates who don't work from home, but I wasn't done yet. The next day, this jackass apparently didn't learn his lesson because he parked in front of his garage again. So, what did I do? Well, I did the exact same thing as the day before, of course. Once again, crappy neighbor came out, realized his car was gone, yelled at his wife, and then went to retrieve it. After this time, he became a bit smarter and started parking in an actual spot before going in to get his lunch or whatever he did there midday. He did this for about 2 weeks before deciding that it was okay to park in front of his garage again. Guess who was still sitting at their desk every day, immediately noticing this? Well, me, of course. Being the concerned resident that I am, I immediately called the tow company, and off his car went again. And, again, this was met with yelling. I wish this had a more satisfying ending, but after the third time, I decided to stop because I genuinely felt bad for his wife, whom he seemed to yell at the most as if it was her fault that he was a dumbass. However, I can tell you that it definitely cost him over $1,000. If he hadn't gotten my roommate's car towed, we would have never discovered that fun little rule. The best part was that many of my neighbors would have their cars parked there at the same time, and they'd never have their cars towed, which made it all the better when his car was. We've had several other encounters with him since this happened, and I have another ongoing story involving the actual HOA that I'll probably write about later. We'll see how that one ends up. The next one is a petty revenge story. My fiancé and I had been dating for 4.5 years. In that time, we bought a house together, adopted dogs together, and I put him through pharmacy school, med school, and lots of people don't realize that pharmacists get their doctorates or how competitive pharmacy can be. We fell even more in love. He's an amazing man, and I'm crazy about him. Imagine my excitement that after braving all of the ups and downs and watching life unfold as a team, he proposed. I was overjoyed, and through tears of happiness I said yes, and of course, our dogs were involved. It's a larger, slightly blush pink amethyst stone with a halo of topaz around it, set in rose gold. I loved it. It was perfect. The next day, I was attending a baby shower for my best friend in my hometown. I trekked my way there, and even though I tried to downplay the engagement because I wanted it to be about her, she made a mini announcement because I knew people who were there. Most people did a little congrats type thing, which was nice, except for her cousin. This girl, let's call her Amy, is super religious. Actually, everyone from my hometown is super religious, and I appreciate their faith, but I didn't like her judgment. She has voiced her opinions before about how people shouldn't live together unless they're married and all that jazz. So when she sauntered over, she took my hand in hers and scrutinized the ring. She more or less said that at least he was making an honest woman out of me, and that he had taken too long to propose. Then she kind of scrunched her nose at my ring and asked what kind of stone it was, with a little snobby half-smile on her face. She also said that it was generic that he would ask me now that he's graduating because that's what everyone does. I don't know what came over me. I love my ring, and I've never been this mean girl, but I've known Amy for a while, and she's always been like this. She likes to say what terrible decisions other people have made and how she always puts Jesus first. So that's why her life has turned out so well. She says it's because she has followed his plan, which ultimately led to her getting married ridiculously young to a guy who really isn't good for her at all and just leeches off of her. She had to put herself through school and work while he would go on long stints out of the country to find himself and follow God's path, which I really think meant bang other women. She married him in the middle of a college year before one of the times he left. I suspect to entice him to come back and have commitments here. Well, I went for it. I said, "Oh, he waited until he knew he could provide for me. It's a pink diamond." Her whole face changed from smug to envious. She practically threw my hand down and mumbled how happy she was for me. I looked up how big my petty lie had been later, only to find out that yes, pink diamonds are actually a thing. And the teeny ones are like $10,000. But hey, she doesn't have to know how poor we are. We are rich with unconditional love and loyalty, and that's why I'm happy to call him my future husband. Addition. I'm brimming with pride and excitement to show you my ring. Thanks for all of your support and well wishes. I hope it works. The next one is an entitled people story. In line at Costco Gas, the lines are nuts because gas prices are crazy, and Costco Gas is cheap and convenient. Everyone is on edge. The Costco gas employees have to periodically sweep the lanes and clean up spilled gas. Just like at the registers, when they close a line, they stop people from lining up in that lane. They finish serving the people currently in the queue and direct other customers into different lanes so they can block off the lane and sweep. I'm pumping gas and see this go down. A woman drives around the cones and into the lane they are sweeping as if she's exempt from the process and is going to get gas. An employee guy jogs over and tells her in a normal tone, "Sorry, ma'am, this lane is closed for the moment. Can you please pull around into a different line?" She asks, "Why?" He replies, "This lane is closed." He sees an empty spot not yet filled in the adjacent lane. "You can go there," and points. She starts screeching, "You don't have to talk to me that way. I don't appreciate it. Screech, screech, screech." A guy gets out of the passenger seat. The employee guy is babbling and pointing and waving, pointing at cones, the empty lane, and the broom. The screeching lady turns into a cursing lady and starts dropping expletives about how he can't treat her like this and using profanity. The passenger guy gives the employee the finger. The employee looks around because he's in over his head. The cursing lady begins with, "Your manager is going to hear about this. You just lost your job. Screech, screech." She gets in her car and peels out, leaving. I finish pumping gas and go find a place to park. I Google the store's phone number and call. I press the number to speak with a manager. I ask for the manager in charge of the gas station. "Sorry, he's gone for the day. Can I leave a message?" Okay, can I tell you then? I just saw this whole thing go down. In a minute, you're going to get a call from a lady claiming she was just disrespected by a gas employee and complaining up a storm. Let me tell you what actually happened from an objective observer, because there's no way this guy did anything wrong, and it's going to come down to his word versus the crazy lady's. Okay, thank you for the heads up. It's nice to hear he was doing the right thing, and actually, your lady is on the phone with another manager right here, it sounds like, and I'll pass along your message, thanks for calling. The next one is an entitled parent story. Okay, so I was talking with my current girlfriend and told her about this story that happened about 3 years ago. For context, I have a German Shepherd named Deuce. I got him as a gift when I was 21, 26 now, and he is the nicest dog you'll ever meet. He's nice around other dogs. I've never seen him bite anyone, and he loves kids, important for later. At the time, I was fresh out of college and had recently gotten a job at a tech company. I moved out to my current neighborhood, which was not only close, but had ample backyard space since Deuce loves to run. I found a house and moved there. After about a month of moving in, I saw one of my neighbors outside, a nice older fellow we'll call Hank. I approached Hank and struck up some friendly small talk before telling him about Deuce. His face immediately became worried and he said, "You might want to keep him inside. Karen hates dogs." I asked who that was, and he pointed to the house on the other side of mine and explained that she absolutely despises dogs and once called the police on a man walking his dogs, accusing them of intentionally pooping on her lawn. I, of course, decided to laugh this off, said goodbye to Hank, and went back inside to check on Deuce. Fast forward a week, and I let Deuce outside in the backyard to run, watching him to make sure he didn't try to climb over the fences. He had tried doing this when my parents were watching him. I then see a kid approach Deuce from the other side of the gate. We'll call him LG for Little Goblin. So Goblin called over to Deuce, saying, "Doggy, doggy," and I thought it was cute, so I went over to say hello. When I realized he had a wooden stake in his hand, he then slashed at my dog with it when he got close enough. But since he's a kid, his stubby arms couldn't reach Deuce through the fence before I called him back. I then went over and asked him what he was doing. Note, I wasn't even yelling, I had just raised my voice a bit. The kid, having realized he had been caught, threw the stake near his shed and ran back inside. I didn't think much of it and let Deuce back inside to double-check to make sure he was all right. That's when I heard a knock at my door. I opened it, and of course there was Karen with her little goblin behind her. "Are you the one who yelled at my kid?" I took a deep breath and said, "I didn't yell at him, but I did raise my voice a bit." She cut me off, saying, "How dare you yell at my baby?" I then tried to explain, "Well, miss, your baby tried stabbing my dog." She looked over my shoulder and saw Deuce laying on the couch. "No, he did not! My little gremlin would do no such thing. Besides, even if he did, your dog probably had it coming." This is when I started to lose my cool a bit and simply said, "What?" She then went on a rant about how that type of dog is dangerous and how People like you are the reason people get mauled by dogs. I simply ignored her and said bye, before closing the door in her face and giving Deuce a treat. About an hour later, there's another knock at my door. I rolled my eyes thinking it's Karen again, but I was surprised when it was the police. I opened the door and said, "How can I help you, officer?" I saw Karen standing behind them with a crap-eating grin on her face. "Officer 1, we received a report that your dog attacked this child. Is this true, sir?" Me, having realized what Karen did. "No, officers. Her child attempted to stab my dog. She should have been watching him." Officer 2, "Can you back up that statement?" Me, "Sure, check near her shed. You'll see the thing he tried to stab him with." The officers checked and found the stake, but for some reason they still weren't 100% convinced. Officer 1, "Can we see the dog in question?" I called out Deuce, and he came running out, excited to meet the new people. I gave him some commands, and he gladly obeyed them in front of the cops. Me, "See, he's a very obedient dog. He would never hurt a kid." Then from behind me I heard, "It's true." I turned to see Hank. He had been out mowing his backyard and saw the entire thing. Hank, "I saw it with my own eyes, officers. The kid had something in his hand and tried using it on the dog." The cops then asked Karen for her side of the story, and she made up some obviously fake lie about how I made Deuce attack her kid for playing too loud, and that I should be arrested for child endangerment. The cops looked at each other, turned to me, apologized, turned to Karen, and gave her a fine for lying to the police and wasting their time. Karen was in disbelief that her hastily thrown together story didn't work. For the next week or so, anytime I would let Deuce out, I would watch him very closely. I got a few dirty looks from Karen and an email from her saying she was going to sue me for child endangerment and emotional distress. But nothing ever came out of it. Hank and I still talk about this event and laugh at it to this day. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.